Good evening, everyone. The GMAT exam is the first step for someone stepping on their MBA application journey. However, with 2024 bringing significant changes to the exam and the scoring system, many have questions. To address these questions and clear up any confusion, we are thrilled to have today with us Ms. Seema, who is the Associate Manager, Outreach for South Asia for GMAT. She will be here with us, so you can come up with your questions. And we already have so many questions for you, Ms. Seema, that we want you to answer
I know.
and stop all the doubts around this, the GMAT exam as such. So please introduce yourself. You've had an awesome journey so far, so we'd like to hear about your professional journey as well.
It's quite interesting, and I think so. Just to give a brief about my experience, I mean, I've got over 12 years of experience, and it has not all been in the same industry. It is, while I was in college, it started in the entertainment industry and was primarily to do with marketing. Even though I've actually done my bachelor's and master's in computers, and I've done my second master's in literature recently. It's more of a one for the kitchen, one for the soul situation. But and moving on, it's I eventually kind of like entered the education industry back in 2016. That's when I actually did teach, all of the test prep products, and eventually ended up opening my own organization as well. That's where my entrepreneurial venture came into picture. But like with COVID, a lot of changes actually happened, and now of course I'm with GMAC. But one of the things that has stayed consistent, that like I'd probably say there are two things that stayed consistent for me throughout my life. One is my love for literature and writing, and the second thing is definitely my passion to educate people about the right path, probably because that has always been such a challenge while I was going through the journey of figuring out what's right for me. And I've seen that there could be a lot of confusion, and that has not changed much, as we just discussed recently. Like that's not really changed much. Even with all of the information which is out there, there's still a lack of clarity, there's still a lack of the right kind of information. And I think it's important that information has to come through the right channels.
Yes, absolutely. And that's exactly why we invited you here today. So, to begin the discussion, we'd like to hear your insights and updates on the GMAT exam. What's happening on the GMAT exam?
So I'll start with one of the latest updates. From starting from July 1st, we have there's a nomenclature change wherein the GMAT Focus Edition now becomes the GMAT exam, and the earlier version of the GMAT exam is now called the 10th edition, not the classic GMAT, not the earlier version. It's just known as a 10th edition. So there's only the 10th edition as the earlier version, and there's just a GMAT exam now. So that's one of the things that, if you go onto the MBA.com account, if you go onto our official channels, you're not going to see Focus Edition anymore. So don't get confused there. We're talking about the version that actually exists now. Now, talking about the version that exists now, it's a change that happened after a really long period in the GMAC history. Of course, there have been changes since 1954, since the exam was first administered. But the recent change was made, so that the exam actually evolves to meet what the candidates' experiences are, or to improve upon the candidate experience, to align with what the business schools are actually looking for at the end of the day, because GMAT is actually supposed to do one specific job, that is to ensure that the business schools find the right fit candidates, and the candidates have the right kind of skill sets. And if you see the Focus Edition, you'll find that whether it be the quant reasoning or the verbal reasoning or data insights, it's been streamlined to one, to make it a shorter exam that's candidate friendly, and the second thing is to make sure that it tests all of the skills that are most essential to show their ability to perform well in the business school. And I think also to kind of like showcase to the employers that they have the necessary skill set to succeed in their job roles that they'll eventually be getting into. So starting off with this, I think that's the primary change. 2 hours 15 minutes is really attractive. I think Overall, with a lot of other features, I mean, if you want to dive into it, I'll be happy to answer the question. But with the overall feature inclusion also and the removal of certain, content, it's definitely become a less stressful examination than it was earlier. So yeah.
Right. We want to hear more about and understand, what the computer adaptive, the whole nature of the exam is like now.
Right. So GMAT is question adaptive. That does not change. All right. But yes, there's been improvements to the, I wouldn't say alterations or change. I would just say there's improvements to the algorithm to make sure that it's even more fair and unbiased than what it was earlier. Earlier, to keep it simple, one of the reasons I don't like to dive into the algorithm is also because that's one of the things I feel that the candidates should not be looking into. Whenever I speak directly to the candidates, also, I always say that trust me and trust the process. All you have to actually do is look at the questions, understand, what skills are tested, and make sure that you know how to actually deal with those questions and the exam format. Because the moment they dive into the algorithm, yes, difficulty matching was there, wherein you answer a question, only then you can move to the next one. The next question gets harder, but that's not the only thing that's taken into context, right? There are a lot of other factors that are taken into context, and but that's all from a perspective of making sure, as I said earlier, that the test is fair and unbiased, and it really predicts a person's ability to succeed in the business environment as they move forward. And so while that holds, the difficulty matching holds, but in the newer version, of course, there's let's say item description or item positioning, and a lot of other factors are taken into consideration. But at the end of the day, the thing that I would say should be a takeaway from this session also is that it's a proprietary algorithm. We've obviously talked about how things are in it to a certain degree, but it's not something that's actually released. The entire functioning is not released to the public. So no matter how much you actually break your minds over how does it really work, people would not be able to actually fathom how it actually works. If you do try to deep dive too much into the algorithm, there are a few repercussions, negative repercussions that can come out of it. One is, do you really know whether the question that you got is difficult only for was easy for you, or it's difficult for everybody else? That's something that you can't really decide. Let's say somebody took the first question and the next question they go to is, oh my god, this is easy. I've seen people struggle and mess up the entire remainder of the examination because now they're worried that they've gotten an easy question, and that means that the score scaling has gone down. But the if you really look at it, that might have been a topic that's really easy for me, and I have no way to determine whether that was a difficult question for everybody. Second thing is that yes, there are occasional experimental question. How do you know whether that was an experimental question? But you see how it can have a negative impact, right? So which is also why I say that don't think about things which are not in your control.
Yes, I think there's a lot of fear factor, around the GMAT exams. I think the stakes are too high, and people are so worried about,
Yeah.
what the exam is trying to test them about, rather than just going there and writing the test. That should rather be the whole concern that they have.
Exactly.
So, Seema, is there a penalty in terms of, if somebody is not able to complete a section? So, I don't think that this was there in the previous version of the GMAT, but does this version penalize you for not completing a section or finishing, or are you, getting better grades because you was finishing a section earlier?
So you know what? This was something that was there in the earlier version also, and this continues to actually be a factor in the current version of the exam as well. All right. It's we always used to say earlier as well that you need to complete your questions because yes, there is a penalty in terms of you. It affects your score scaling. I mean, unfortunately, we can't explain the exam like how we would do any other exam, wherein say that this is the number of negative points, so this is the number of score with respect to penalty, while because again that's not the sole thing that's considered, right? But yes, it's recommended that people actually complete their exam, which is also why the question review and edit feature actually makes a world of difference in the newer exam. Because otherwise, if let's say I am at question number 5, I would probably be stuck at question number 5 and thinking that, oh, I have to get my next question right, and I will never move on for a really long time because I just have too many things to, I feel like I have too much at stake. But when question review edit feature has come in, it gives you an opportunity to make an educated guess, select your answer, and then move on and make sure that you complete the rest of the questions. So it has to be used a bit wisely rather than kind of like, trying to go back to every single question or of something of that sort. But if used wisely, then people can ensure that they're completing their exam. So yes, it's definitely there.
Okay. And what about, we hear a lot of times that if you get the first 10 or 15 questions correct, that is where you are going right on the GMAT and you are definitely going to end up with a high score. And if you don't get them correct, then you are actually looking at a huge slump in the score. So,
I
what
wish
are
I
your
could say
thoughts?
that was that simple. I mean, so this is again, trying to find a formula, isn't it? This is literally what we spoke about earlier. We want a formula. We want something we have to know before we get into something that this is exactly how it actually works. So it's not that simple. I mean, it's the way that I've already mentioned this because it's a proprietary algorithm. I cannot kind of like, obviously we cannot kind of like tell you exactly how it works, but yes, the question adaptiveness is important. That is, let's say it's important to get your previous question right, and moving on to the next question. It does have an impact. It's definitely, I'm not saying it doesn't. It does have a certain impact, but I'm also kind of adding on to that, saying that that's not the only thing that has an impact. So if you kind of say that, you know what, 15 questions are there, and that's going to, that's the deciding factor for my entire score scaling, then that would be a bit inaccurate, isn't it? Because I would be like saying that that's the only thing that we are actually looking into, when that's not the case. There are multiple factors that are taken into consideration for the overall score scaling.
Correct. Ankita, I think this answers your question also about the scoring and how it works for each question. So I don't think we'll get into each question per se, but once you understand the sections and how the exam works, at least to the extent that is coming directly from GMAT, that's all that you should stick to. And then go and attempt the exam.
Yeah, and as I
Right.
would
So,
like to repeat myself again, yeah, it's like, do not try getting into too much into something that you can't actually control, or because it really does not help you in the exam process. What you really should be aware of is the actual format of the exam. What kind of questions are asked and what kind of skills are actually tested on the exam, so that you can actually deal with it better.
right. We'd also like to understand, how the scoring between the two versions of the GMAT. How do we interpret the scores, and how do the schools look at the scores?
Right. So obviously, this has been a point of conversation, a large part of the conversations that I've been having, over the last 1 year, and still continuing to have, which is rightfully so, because obviously, when there's something that's changing, and that's going to have an impact on the way people are getting admitted, students are getting admitted. It's right for them to actually want to have clarity about this. Let me start with the difference in the scores itself. So ideally, when you look at the scores, the differentiating factor for you from a 10th edition GMAT format versus the current GMAT exam is the fact that the 10th edition had a 200 to 800 score range, whereas the new score range is 205 to 805. That's a baseline that I just want to set. And if you look at the way the earlier exam was scored, it consisted of two sections contributing to the total score, whereas now you have three sections contributing to the total score. The reason I say this, or I started off with this, is to help you understand that you cannot have an apple to apple comparison between both the scores. And the way that you need to, if you did want to compare, if you did want to actually assess your performance basis the earlier version, to understand how schools are also looking at it, that would be through the concordance table, which is available on mba.com. That's literally the same thing that the business schools are also going to see. And you'll also see a shift in the way that we are communicating about the scores, and the way that we are asking you to actually look at it. That is from percentile ranking perspective. I know that it's, as Indians, we're like obsessed with looking at perfect scores, or looking at a full figure. That's very attractive for us, but the fact is percentile rankings are a better indicator of your actual performance. And so, for example, let's say a 605 on the focus edition might be at, I might not be entirely accurate, but maybe it's at a 72nd percentile, and that would be equivalent to, let's say, a 650 on the 10th edition of the GMAT exam, which is the earlier version of the exam. Now, naturally, people started thinking that, oh, you know what, the focus score looks lower, right? But it's not lower, it's a recalibrated score. And the percentile ranking is literally the same for both the scores. Now, this is a really good thing to have that distinction, or because over a period of time, because over like think about a decade, there's been a skewing of the scores basis the test population change towards one end, which meant that you might be getting a higher score, but your percentile is still low. With the focus edition, that's actually eliminated, which means that you have a better indicator to actually showcase your business school. So if you did get a 720, now you don't have to be worried and force yourself to retake the exam to get a 760, because now the percentile ranking is actually clearer, and it's kind of giving a very clear distinction between the scores themselves. And do the schools know about it? So let's give a bit of a background. GMAC is a non-profit organization, and we are made up of business schools. It's a council of business schools, and all of the member schools have been a part of this change. So obviously, they have a complete understanding of it. The other GMAT accepting schools also, there are school teams which constantly are in touch with the different business schools, and if they have any queries, any kind of question, that they have been educated extensively, but even then, if they do have any questions, they get back to our teams to have a fair clarity. And you'll also find most of the business schools kind of like talking about, again, this could vary from one business school to another how they talk about the scores. Maybe some of them still say that, okay, we want this specific score, and most of the others would now talk about percentiles. So this is a very school specific thing. That's something that you really have to check with the business school to understand how are they looking at this course. Which is also, I'm sure that Shruti would agree with me, that before you look at a score, the first thing you need to actually do is have a fair understanding about the kind of business schools you want to apply to, because then you can actually move forward and find out, okay, what do you have to actually achieve from either a score perspective that the business school is looking at, or from a percentile ranking perspective that they are looking at. But ideally, if you did want to compare both the scores, on an ending note, Shruti is obviously looking at percentile ranking, which is also what the schools are going to do.
Yes. And then it is up to the schools per se, because there's not a lot of declaration on that yet, whether they are looking at the sectional percentiles or they are looking at the overall score percentile. So have you observed any trends on that, whether the sectional percentiles are important, or, are they okay with both, or are they also observing and seeing how it goes over the first year?
I think even with the earlier edition, it has always been the case that the different kinds of schools have had different perspective in terms of how they put the scores out. Some of the schools have put out, let's say, the sectional scores, and I feel, again, this is a personal opinion, that the schools which did that earlier probably will continue to do that. As I said, this is more of a personal assumption rather than a clear cut idea about whether the schools are going to change the perspective in which they're going to look at the scores. But you know just so that there's no confusion, again, my recommendation is, and I'm sure, Shruti, this is probably what you tell us, candidates also, or people who come to you for advice, is connect with the schools and understand exactly, and I'm sure you help them do this, as to what they are looking for. And this transition period is important because I guess the kind of communication that's coming out there, and now probably over 1 year or over this cycle, that's going to set in, and everybody's going to have absolute clarity that this is the way they're going to continue to look at. But so far, it's the schools that have been looking at the sectional rankings. I mean, the sectional percentile rankings. I've seen some of the schools actually continue to do that, but I don't know if most schools might want to do that. Again, I think it's more of a school decision to kind of like see the way they want to actually look at this course.
Yes. And we'd also like to hear your insights from the educator's point of view. What are the test taking strategies that stand out? How close is the mock test score to the actual score? How do you really calibrate your mock test? Just your insights from your experience as an educator and with GMAT. How does that?
um
Hmm.
So, because I'm an academician at heart, I think that's something that's never going to change. I still go through the questions and I still try to like practice, and I'm hoping to actually take the focus edition as well, which is now the GMAT exam. But the strategies in terms of the questions have not changed, because I think the way people have to approach the questions, because the questions have not changed. Content has actually reduced, but the content that was already there is there. So from that perspective, I don't think anybody should be worried or surprised, because it's like, in quantitative reasoning, they still have problem solving questions that existed earlier. Verbal reasoning, they still have this reading comprehension and critical reasoning, which does not require any information from outside. It's gotten, I think, less stressful in that case, because when sentence correction was there earlier, they did have to learn grammar, and I think that was one question type which did test on a little bit of an English aspect in it, right? The essay has been taken off. The data insights actually literally existed earlier in the form of integrated reasoning and data sufficiency, but it's been brought to the forefront because of the importance of data literacy. So I think from a data insights perspective, that's something that people probably did not take it seriously, because it was not a part of the exam or the score, as we call it. Now that it's become important, now everybody's kind of like focusing on that. Apart from that, the questions have not essentially changed from any of that perspective. What I would advise from a prep perspective is also to take a practice exam. And I'm dead against talking about practice exam as a understand yourself. I kind of say it as understand the exam, because when you are kind of like getting into the field and taking a practice exam for the first time, you cannot know where you stand with something you've never done. So it just gives the people who take the exam a perspective about how is the format going to be, what kind of questions are going to be there, what looks familiar, what doesn't actually look familiar, and it creates a benchmark to start the preparation from. And we have two free practice exams, the practice exam 1 and 2, and then we have the paid practice exams 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Now, to address your question about what algorithm do we use, it's literally the same algorithm that we use on the exam. The content, some of the questions, because it's the questions continue, we have retired GMAT questions, and the remaining questions that have been created by the same product team, which creates the questions for the actual GMAT exam. So it cannot get more accurate than that. And they have to go to mba.com, create their account, and access the questions. There's also an official starter kit which has about 70 questions that they can practice. And there's a couple of videos that gives them a sense of how the format is going to be and everything, and they can practice as well. So I definitely recommend doing that. And moving forward with the remainder of the practice, I think everybody has to understand that there's no one fit for all. And people have to kind of maintain error logs. People have to understand what are their pain points, what are the things that they need to work on. The only one best thing that I can talk about GMAT exam, and having gone through the same experience myself, I've never been a straight A student, Shruti. I've never been the topper of a class and wholly dedicated, and then studying was the only thing. I've been super distracted. I find it really hard to focus on things. So in life in general, I've always had to do double the amount of work to make sure that double the effort to actually do certain tasks, because the focus has always been a bit of a challenge. So, and when I started off with, let's say, even with the teaching, when I started preparing for it, to be honest, it was a uphill climb to figure out exactly what's tested. That's when I understood that it's important to understand the skills that are getting tested. whether it be data literacy, whether it be the problem solving, what is it trying to accomplish. If you understand that and then backtrack and understand that formulaic approach is not what it's essentially looking for, but the ability to actually truly understand concepts and apply them in the real world business scenarios. And logic is something that I don't think as a population we essentially learn. And I like to simply call it, even critical reasoning, what I refer to it as, is just asking the question why. We are not taught to ask why question, and that's what GMAT essentially does. And once people understand that, it becomes a lot more easier to navigate the exam. I think people perceive it as difficult because it's something that we are not used to.
It's not a
I
part of the basic training that you go through from your schooling up till now. We see CCTs and all of these coming up, but again, it will take a lot of time for the whole mindset to change.
I think it's a
And
it's a it's a
that's a
lifestyle. Yeah, it's a life habit.
correct. And in terms of the exam taking as such, what would you advise people? How should they balance their time in terms of the different sections? Is that really important, or is there some way or something that you've seen in your experience that works on this front?
So I again, I probably go back to what I said earlier in terms of there is no one size fits all, and nobody wants to hear that, but it is the candid truth about what the situation is. But remember how I said that taking the first practice exam gives a sense of the format, and I feel there has to be a record. And we, again, this is not something we like doing in general. Let's say I took a practice exam, I don't want to go back to the exam. I don't think anybody likes going back to any exam that they have actually taken. But it's important to go back and understand the content, the context, the question types, and maintaining a log of that, and kind of making a record of what they have encountered, and then moving forward. And when they actually practice, going back and figuring out and understanding the topics and recording each and every experience as they actually go through it really helps. Now, let's start with the planning part of it. I think once you've taken the first practice exam, the obviously the record keeping is there, but at the same time, the plan is where people fail a lot, primarily because we end up creating very unrealistic plans for ourselves. We always feel like, okay, the Rome can be conquered in a day, which is like not quite possible. You have to understand that it's we have to be very realistic with how our lives are. We feel like, okay, I'm going to stop everything, this is what it is, and I'm going to like kill it. People would end up probably trying to do things maybe 1 to 2 hours in a day, and the next day they'll be like, oh my god, this is like way hard to achieve. It's like with workout, right? I mean, you do too much the first or second day, and then you kind of like give up really fast. So consistency is really important, and understanding how your life is with respect to, let's say, your work commitments, your personal, I think entertainment is also important to take into account, because you do need to unwind. When do you do your practice is also important, because you can't come back after a hard day at work and do a bunch of questions. You're bound to get them wrong, because GMAT does require certain attention. And if you do those questions at that time, you'll get it wrong, and then you'll be like, okay, this is not meant for me. I've seen this happen with a lot of people. Is this the wrong placement? Your mind has to be fresh when you're trying to learn something new, because that's going to take a bit of time in the initial stages. So I think figuring out exactly how that pans out, it could be like I always say, it could be maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes in a day, or even alternative days, or you break it down to understand what your learning style is. Different people have different kinds of learning style. Some people have great focus in the morning, some people have great focus at night, but it's just they have to kind of like figure it out. That understanding has to come probably, I would say, in the first 2 weeks, so that they kind of like clear where their head's at, and then go ahead with the plan. In terms of the questions, again, when they take the practice exam, they will understand the concepts. I ideally think that the GMAT does not test them on a lot of diverse concepts and topics. Let's say with quant, it's like basic 10th grade and below, quantitative, like basic foundational algebra and arithmetic. That's it. How much time do you need to brush upon your foundations? Not a lot, actually. So a couple of days is more than sufficient to brush upon that. Critical reasoning, again, is understanding the fundamental way in which it actually works. What is that critical reasoning skills, and how does it work? What kind of question types are there? Understanding for reading comprehension, what kind of question types are there, which is again reasoning based. So that also does is not going to take more than a couple of days to really understand what's there with dedicated attention to it. It's the same thing with data insights, understanding what kind of questions are there. For data insights, also the struggle is, I think, more from a perspective of time management, and again understanding what works for you the best. Once they have actually figured that out, the remainder of the part is about practice. So they need to understand how to break it down and practice, and timed practice is important, guys. So that you're able to kind of like manage your time when you do your practice, which I've already mentioned. So this is the best way to actually go about it. And honestly, Shruti, you just asked me the wrong question, because I can go on and on about it. Coming from the background, there's just like so many tips and advice that I have on my mind, but I'd probably kind of like stop it here. But I think I've kind of covered most of the really, really important things.
Yes, do share some tips and some preparation suggestions for preparation for the data insight section. That is something that has everybody very worried, and what is being tested out here, and why do I really have to go into it, and how do I prepare for it?
So I've talked to a lot of candidates who've taken the exam and who prepared for it also. And this is the interesting feed I've got from a lot of them, right? They didn't find the questions hard. They just found that they needed more time. So there's a big difference in terms of questions being hard versus time management. And the interesting thing is, when you look at data sufficiency, it used to be there in the quantitative reasoning, and it's there in as a part of logical thinking skills now in data insights. So that's more to do with building the data, what do you call, your logical thinking skills, and getting used to the question types and honing yourself in that way. Now, moving on to questions like, let's say, multi-source reasoning, table analysis, or graphics interpretation. Um, the key there is to understand. So there might be various approaches you can go through to achieve your answer, but the key there is to understand what would really work for you the best, so that you can actually do it in the shortest time. When I say do what, so the thing with these kind of question types is, you have a lot of data, right? And you need to kind of like filter out the data that's most relevant for you to be answering the questions that's been provided to you. And that comes with actually experimenting with different approaches, and then figuring out the best way, or the approach that really fits you, and which you can take forward into your exam. And that's something that comes with practice. And when you're doing your practice, don't go in with the mindset that it is quantitative. For a lot of people out there, data insights is not just quant being tested there. It does test you on your math skills, it does test you on your verbal skills, or a combination of both, and then of course your data skills. So I think one is going the mindset that they're going in with to deal with your data insights has to be clear. So I actually used to be a verbal trainer in the past, and I used to teach data, integrated reasoning, which means that there's an extension of critical reasoning in those questions. So it's not entirely all math or just data being shown there. There's verbal related skills also being tested there. And in terms of, let's say, the kind of questions and gleaning off the data, make sure, again, on a final note, make sure that you actually experiment with different approaches. I think this is the best advice I can actually give people. At the end of the day, you know what, I feel data insights is like super important, Shruti, because um, the simple reason, you can't go to Amazon and say that I find it difficult to look at data, so just like send 10 packages, because that's what I'm comfortable with. And I think that's essentially what we, it's the section is actually testing people on.
Yes. And there's one question, interestingly, I'm not too sure if you would like to take it up. This is about any books other than the official guide which can help with the quant and data insights. Although my suggestion over here would be that you pick up the concept where you need help and you take it from any book wherever you get practice and clarify that concept. But your thoughts on this, in case.
A lot of people ask me, what if I've complete the official guide and what more material? And I always say they're very hard to finish your official materials. I've tried, okay, because there's official guide with more than 900 something questions. There's supplements, that's like the quantitative reasoning review, the verbal reasoning review, the data insights review. That's a supplement to the official guide as well. That's a bunch of more questions. Then there's the question banks that come with it. Then there's the obviously the practice exams. It's the official guide and the supplements itself. It's a lot of material for people to actually go through. Now ideally I would strongly suggest sticking to the official material for one reason: the quality of questions that you actually come across, the kind of content that, the reason why we don't have more things also is because there's a lot of effort that's gone into actually creating this content to make sure that it maintains the quality of the actual exam. And some of the questions that actually I've already mentioned is retired GMAT questions. So you're not going to find any questions that are more accurate than this or more representative of the actual exam than this. Once you complete that, which I already mentioned, it is quite doubtful whether you're going to actually complete the entire material. If you do, I mean, that's amazing, but that also is a bit questionable, because that makes me think that you might have burned through your materials without doing proper review, which is another prep tip that I would actually give you: do 5 questions but go back and understand what you did right and what you did wrong. So that's my take on the materials. I think the official materials are ample and quite extensive, and I don't think that the quality of the questions can actually be reproduced to that accuracy as much as anything else.
Yes. In case you need any concept where you need help, I think there are different resources where you could go to, let's say the
Yeah.
PNC, or just understanding the mathematical concept. But for the question types, the official guide is the best resource, is the
Practice is
closest.
there. You can learn the concepts on different resources. I would like encourage you to explore everything and find out what's the best fit for you.
Yeah. Another interesting question is, what kind of reading should one do to prepare well for the verbal section? So a lot of times we hear that you read the editorials and you go into extensive reading if you want to increase your verbal test taking
I
skills.
have a I have a controversial statement for this one. I always used to recommend that don't get into reading unless you're somebody who actually enjoys reading, because I've always found it like, it's very difficult to force somebody who does not have a reading habit to actually get into a reading habit. It's good to read. It's great to read. Do you need to actually develop a reading habit for GMAT? Not essentially. I think when you look at GMAT, you also have to look at it from a perspective of what does the exam actually do with the reading comprehension also. It's ideally, even in a business environment, you're going to look at a lot of information, and your ability to establish relationship between different portions of the text, find logic, draw inferences. These are the kind of things that are actually getting tested there. And I feel if you do sufficient practice with that concept and go through the reading comprehension in the practice itself, that might actually be more than sufficient, because this is the kind of passages that you're going to come across. This is kind of the kind of structure, this is what you're expected to do. And I feel that might actually be quite sufficient in itself, because I feel one of the reasons I used to kind of like say this also, as I said, this could be a bit controversial in terms of the advice. It's a very personal opinion or advice that I used to give as well, primarily because I feel that it makes it more daunting for somebody who does not actually like to read. Reading comprehension starts looking more difficult. Now I'm like telling somebody that, oh, now you have to read this also. It's like, as such, I wasn't enjoying this. Now you're asking me to do that. So it kind of like dissuades a lot of people and creates a lot of irrational fear or dislike in somebody's mind. towards reading comprehension. Whereas I actually think that if people did the reading comprehension right in GMAT, they'd probably find it very appealing and most, I would say more, let's say, less stress free to actually do more than a lot of other questions because you don't need to bring anything from outside.
Yeah, it's very interesting if you really get the hang of it and you've practiced enough and start thinking in that way. So
But I'm a
it's all
general
about the
advocate. Yeah, I generally advocate reading. It's great to read. And I feel that as human beings, which is I developed it. I mean, I love reading books. I love reading fiction, and I think news is something I always hated. But over a period of time, I realized that it is so important to be well informed about the world around us. That's going to give you a lot of perspective and improve your critical thinking as well, which could add to your, the way that you actually look at text. So,
Yeah. So we just have one last question. Thank you for taking out the time today. You've been clarifying our questions endlessly. So the HPS application for this year, it has brought up this GMAT business writing assessment, and that may be required for the students who are actually submitting the GMAT focus scores. So do we expect more schools to follow suit on that? And what does this assessment actually test? Is it the same writing assessment that has been called off
it
from the previous exam?
it does have the the same this thing, but if you actually look at the content or the context also, you'll see that it's not required for the application, it's not required for the admission either. It's after their process and after the admit or during the interview process, that's if it is required, they would actually mention it. So it's not a requirement as per se, as far as the way they have actually put it out as well. And I'm not really sure whether that's something that the schools would require. And again, this is, if you look at the way the HBS is actually looking at it, is not from an admission perspective, and I think they've clearly mentioned it as well, that they don't need to be actually taking this for the actual admission. It's for like the post this thing if there is a requirement. So I just want to make sure that people don't kind of like go off their heads
For the
about
interview
it and think.
process, they might be asked, right? Yes.
Yeah, it's a very specific might this thing than a requirement at all. So yeah, and I think they've
Totally optional. But
communicated
this
that
is very
quite
similar
clearly
to
also.
the writing very clearly. We were just very curious on understanding, what is this the AWA assessment
It's not
that is
not
not
that
there in
coming
the
from.
focus edition
No,
one?
no, not at all, not at all. It's a completely different use, and it's a completely different. Yes, the question is like same, but then the use is like completely different from what it actually served. So.
Great. Any last tips for people who are preparing or planning to prepare for the GMAT? What would you suggest to them?
What I would say is, stop focusing on things that are, not as relevant, and don't take pressure. I mean, it's great to be on public forums and, talk to your peers and talk to other people and get advice. Sometimes that can be counterproductive because it ends up scaring you way too much than you'd actually need to be. I often think that GMAT exam is perceived to be more difficult than what it actually is, because you just have so much of discussions around it, and the more you talk about something and the more it looks more complex than what it actually is. So it's great, use public forums wisely, but at the same time be a bit more mindful about how much you're drawing from it. Again, with your practice, don't dive into it in trying to accomplish it in a day or this thing. Try to figure out exactly what works for you. Learn from other people. It's great to get inputs and great to understand what's working for other people, but you need to learn to mold it in a way that that really works for you. Second thing is that, I mean, people have already used the newer edition scores. People have got admits into colleges. The business schools are completely aware and they know how to actually look at the scores. And yes, the earlier edition is valid. The 10th edition scores are valid for 5 years from the point of writing. So is the focus edition, which is now just a GMAT exam. And the schools are not going to have a preference of one over the other. They're just going to make the fair comparison using the concordance table, and they're completely well educated about how to actually look at those things. Just focus on what you need to prepare. It's just another exam. It's not NASA science, to be honest. So just understand the format, prepare for it accordingly, and ideally don't wait forever to register for the exam. Don't keep it for the last moment, just in case you have any sort of change, or you need to give the team the due time to turn around. And because we verify their security is really important for us. So try to, I generally advise booking it. See, if you're going to write it after 4 months, book it 4 months in advance itself. One, it gives you a goal to work towards. The other thing is, you have ample time to make sure you get the location of your preference and the time of your preference as well. So that's it from my end, Shruti.
And is it okay to add to this summary that you need to now look at your scores from the percentile end and not just the end number
Yes,
or the final score that you get? So
absolutely.
get used to
And
looking at it from the percentiles.
get used to the percentile ranking. Look at the concordance table if you've not already looked at it. The sectional percentiles are also there. If the business school is asking you for that, the total score percentiles are also there. It gets updated in the third quarter of every year. We updated it in Jan after the test taking happened, and it's aligning to our predictions. So don't expect too many changes. So that it's a good thing. So we are on track with respect to that.
Great. Thank you, Seema. Thank you so much for your time today. And guys, if you have more questions, please join the GMAT. They conduct a lot of sessions every now and then. So make sure you're keeping track of those and getting your answers directly from the test makers and the test takers.
Thank you, Shruti,
Good
so much
evening.
for having me. And I know that I tend to go off on a monologue sometimes with all my responses, but it's been a great pleasure interacting with you. And then I've really enjoyed the conversations that we've had, because it aligns a lot. So great for having me here. And to the candidates,
Absolutely.
you know what? I actually recognize some of the people because I've seen them on my multiple platforms. So great to you guys, and thank you so much for actually joining in for this session as well. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you once again. Good night.
Good night.